The moment Ethan Carter stood up and gave away his seat, he had no idea his life was about to break open in a way pain and hope often do, suddenly, quietly, and forever. His legs already ached from a 12-hour night shift, his stomach hollow with hunger he pretended not to feel, and his thoughts fixed on the small backpack at his feet that carried everything he owned of value. Still, when he saw the woman swaying slightly in the crowded train car, one hand gripping the pole and the other pressed protectively against her side, something older than exhaustion rose in him. It was the kind of instinct forged by loss, by responsibility, by years of choosing others over himself. He stood without hesitation, eyes lowered, unaware that a single act of kindness on a shaking train would soon echo through boardrooms, headlines, and his own fragile heart. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Ethan's life had narrowed to survival long before that morning commute. 3 years earlier, he had buried his wife, Laura Carter, beneath a sky that refused to rain, as if even the clouds had nothing left to give. She had been the light in their small apartment, the voice that softened his edges, the one who believed his hands could build something lasting. When cancer took her quickly, it left behind silence, medical debt, and a 4-year-old boy named Noah who clung to Ethan's jacket every night as if sleep itself were dangerous. Ethan worked wherever he could: warehouses, night security, loading docks, jobs that paid little but demanded everything. Each day began before sunrise and ended long after Noah was asleep, and in between Ethan learned the quiet art of enduring without complaint. The train was his bridge between worlds, the thin metal artery carrying him from a place that drained him to a place that barely sustained him. That morning, the car was packed with bodies and impatience, with people staring through phones and into nothing. Ethan sat because his knees were swollen and his back felt like splintered wood, but when he saw the woman, well-dressed yet pale, standing awkwardly as the train lurched, he rose before his mind could argue. He gestured toward the seat, stepped aside, and steadied himself against the wall. He did not know her name was Margaret Hale. He did not know she was the mother of one of the most powerful men in the city. He only knew she needed the seat more than he did. What Ethan did not notice was the man a few steps away who had seen everything. Daniel Whitmore stood quietly near the doors, a tailored coat draped over his arm, his expression unreadable. To the world, he was a billionaire industrialist, the kind whose name lived on buildings and stock tickers. To himself, he was a man burdened by distance, from people, from meaning, from the simple decency he had once believed would guide him. That morning, he had chosen the train instead of his driver, needing to feel something ordinary, something human. When he watched Ethan stand without hesitation, without expectation, something tightened in his chest. It was not admiration alone. It was recognition. The ride continued, stations passing in a blur of concrete and graffiti. Ethan stood in silence, gripping the rail as his balance wavered. His phone buzzed with a message from the daycare reminding him of an overdue payment. He closed his eyes briefly, counting breaths, reminding himself that Noah's smile that morning had been worth every strain. Margaret Hale noticed his posture, the way his shoulders bore invisible weight, the way his eyes carried a fatigue that went deeper than sleep. She felt a quiet shame for taking the seat without protest, but she also felt gratitude for the kindness that spared her pain. She did not speak, but she watched him, memorizing the kindness she rarely saw anymore. When the train finally slowed and doors slid open, the moment might have ended there, lost among hundreds of forgettable commutes. But as people poured out, Margaret faltered. Her knee buckled, and for an instant, the polished calm she wore cracked. Ethan was there immediately, steadying her, offering his arm, his face flushed with concern. Daniel Whitmore stepped forward at the same time, his presence sudden, commanding without effort. Together, they helped her onto the platform. The train pulled away, leaving behind the echo of steel and a moment suspended in the air. Margaret regained her balance and nodded her thanks, eyes shining with something like emotion. Daniel watched Ethan closely now, noting the worn boots, the frayed sleeve, the way he asked nothing in return. He asked for Ethan's name, for his destination, for nothing else. Ethan answered simply, uncomfortable with attention, eager to continue on to work. He did not know that Daniel's mind was already turning, measuring not profit, but character. Days passed, and Ethan returned to his routine, unaware that his small kindness had followed him home. He struggled through another week of double shifts, another late notice slipped under his door, another night of helping Noah with homework at the kitchen table that doubled as a desk. Then came the call that nearly went unanswered because he assumed it was another debt collector. The voice on the other end asked him to come in for a meeting. No explanation given. Confused and wary, Ethan almost declined. He did not trust good news anymore. But something in him, perhaps the same instinct that made him stand on that train, told him to go. The building he entered was nothing like the places he worked. Glass and light stretched upward, quiet efficiency humming in the air. He felt small, out of place, his hands rough against the smooth surface of the reception desk. When Daniel Whitmore entered the room, recognition sparked, followed by disbelief. Daniel spoke not of charity, not of pity, but of values. He spoke of watching a man give up comfort without thought, of a world starving for decency, of businesses built not only on profit but on people. He spoke of an opportunity, one that would start with a job but could become something more. Ethan listened, heart pounding, suspicion warring with hope. The change did not happen all at once. Ethan began with a modest role in one of Daniel's logistics companies, his experience from warehouses finally valued instead of exploited. He worked hard, as he always had, but now effort was met with respect. Schedules flexed so he could be there for Noah. Benefits covered what he had long gone without. Slowly, the knot in his chest loosened. He slept better. He laughed more. Noah noticed first, the way children always do, asking why Daddy smiled at nothing now. Daniel Whitmore did not disappear from Ethan's life. He watched from a distance, mentoring quietly, opening doors when Ethan proved ready. He saw in Ethan the man he might have been had he not let ambition harden him. Margaret Hale met Noah one afternoon, her eyes misting as she watched Ethan kneel to tie his son's shoes with patient care. The kindness from the train had rippled outward, touching lives in ways none of them could have predicted. Years later, Ethan would sometimes ride that same train, now in a clean coat, his posture lighter. He still stood when someone needed a seat. He still believed that decency mattered even when it cost something. He taught Noah that the measure of a man was not what he had, but what he gave when no one was keeping score. And Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire the world saw as untouchable, found his own life changed by witnessing a simple act that reminded him who he wanted to be. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that small kindnesses can change destinies, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and let your engagement tell the algorithm that stories like this matter. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments about a moment when a small act of kindness changed your life or someone else's. Ethan never knew exactly how far that one choice traveled, how many doors it opened beyond his own. He only knew that on a crowded train, tired and unnoticed, he chose compassion over comfort. And in a world that often rewards cruelty and haste, that single, quiet decision proved that goodness still has the power to rewrite fate. The real transformation in Ethan Carter's life did not arrive with applause or headlines, but in the quiet mornings that followed, when he woke before dawn and realized the weight on his chest was no longer fear alone. With the new job came responsibility of a different kind, the kind that asked him to believe in himself again. At first, he moved through the glass hallways of the company like a guest afraid of overstaying his welcome, carefully measuring every word, every decision, haunted by the thought that one mistake could send him back to the life he had barely escaped. He still packed his lunch in the same worn container, still counted every dollar, still kissed Noah's forehead every night with the same silent promise that he would never fail him again. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's quiet diligence began to stand out. He did not compete for attention or credit. He stayed late to help coworkers understand systems he had once struggled to learn alone. He noticed inefficiencies others ignored because he had lived on the other side of them, where a small delay meant missed pay or lost time with family. Managers began asking his opinion. His name appeared in meetings he was not yet invited to attend. Each small acknowledgement felt unreal, like a life meant for someone else brushing against his own. At home, change arrived gently but unmistakably. Noah no longer fell asleep to the sound of his father typing resumes at the kitchen table. The fridge no longer echoed when opened. On weekends, Ethan took Noah to the park without the constant buzz of anxiety in his pocket. He watched his son run, laugh, scrape his knee, and get back up again, and something inside Ethan healed in pieces he hadn't known were broken. He began to talk to Laura at night again, not in grief alone, but in gratitude, telling her how close he had come to losing hope, and how strangely, beautifully, it had found him anyway. Daniel Whitmore observed all of this quietly. He did not interfere, did not rush the process. He had learned the hard way that real strength revealed itself over time. In Ethan, he saw consistency, humility, and an unshakable moral center that could not be taught in business school or bought with wealth. Daniel began involving him in larger projects, not as a favor, but as a test. Ethan passed each one not with brilliance of ego, but with clarity of purpose. He made decisions that protected workers, balanced profit with fairness, and refused shortcuts that would hurt people he might never meet. The true turning point came during a crisis that threatened the company's reputation and stability. A supply chain failure left hundreds of workers facing layoffs, and executives argued numbers while lives hung in the balance. Ethan spoke up when silence felt safer. He proposed an alternative that required sacrifice at the top, including delayed expansion and reduced executive bonuses, but preserved jobs and dignity. The room fell quiet. This was not how power usually worked. Daniel watched as resistance gave way to reflection, then acknowledgement. The plan was risky, but it was right. When the decision was made to move forward, it marked more than a business shift. It marked a cultural one. Employees felt seen. Loyalty deepened. Productivity followed not from fear, but from trust. And Ethan, the single father who once stood unnoticed on a crowded train, became a symbol within the company of what leadership truly meant. Years later, on a bright autumn afternoon, Ethan stood at a podium he never imagined approaching. The company was opening a new community initiative focused on employment opportunities for struggling parents and caregivers. Daniel Whitmore sat in the front row, older now, his sharp edges softened by time and reflection. Margaret Hale was there too, her health stronger, her eyes warm as she watched Ethan speak not of himself, but of chance, kindness, and the responsibility that came with both. Ethan spoke of a moment on a train, of how easy it would have been to stay seated, to look away, to choose comfort. He spoke of how small decisions reveal who we are, and how the world changes not always through grand gestures, but through quiet ones that ask nothing in return. His voice wavered only once, when he mentioned Noah, now older, standing at the back of the crowd, watching his father with pride that filled the space between them like light. When the applause faded and the crowd dispersed, Ethan found himself alone for a moment, standing in the late afternoon sun. He thought of the man he had been, tired, afraid, invisible. He thought of the man he had become, still humble, still careful, but no longer broken. He understood then that fate had not changed because a billionaire noticed him, but because he had chosen kindness when life had given him every excuse not to. That choice had echoed outward, touching lives, shaping futures, restoring faith in ways no one could fully measure. And somewhere, on a crowded train, another tired soul might stand up for someone else, unaware that in doing so, they were quietly setting their own transformation in motion.